Hi, everybody. This is Heather Lockett, and we're having lasting conversations. Today, we are kicking it off via Zoom with the absolute extraordinary dynamo, Olivia Akin. How are you today, Olivia?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we are connected by a mutual friend and producer, Janine Stella, who has been itching to get us together. And we're going to have a really great conversation. You have your whole wheelhouse is achieving success, and you have a podcast by that very name. You have a book that you authored called Achieving Success in Career Development. Your resume is bionic. We could get into that, but I wanted to just go ahead and welcome you. And you have taken the time today from a vacation slot in Orlando, which also means that we're just up the street from each other. So I've always liked the kismet of everything and how we're just, even by location, we're very interconnected. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Listen, so you have had an extraordinary career already as a woman under 30. That's where the dynamo, the firecracker, this fire within that clearly you're helping people achieve their own levels of success and light their fires from within to expand and do whatever it is that they're doing. Where has that started? And I'm going to actually start with a question that you usually ask your guests is, what does success mean to you?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something that never typically gets flipped. I've only had one other person ever flip the question on me. So I appreciate you doing that. For me, success means it looks like as long as I could help one person every single day in one sense of a way, whether I know it or not, then I've been successful. It might be someone who listens to the podcast. It might be the act of kindness that when I'm at Chick-fil-A or going to the store that might do a piece of good and make an impact in someone's life. And I might not even know how that might play out.
I love that. And one of the words I use all the time is kind of my own life mantra is organic. So as life organically plays through us, and we can have a vision of where that's going, but that's where if we're just waking up and can enjoy our day, that's a success. A lot of people have a horrible time, or they're in bed, or maybe even in their deathbed. But the success of waking up and appreciating our life and how it flows, that can be the true nugget. And then the skyrocket to whether there's professional success and family success. And let's tap into what it is from the essence of your book and from what you do for coaching for people.
Yeah, so achieving success, and the whole reason I purposely named the book Achieving Success in Career Development and the podcast Achieving Success with Olivia Akin is on the premise that we are always achieving success. And success, kind of like you mentioned, can look different um, today versus tomorrow. It can change, and that is okay. And so, in the podcast aspect of it, it really is uncovering what, especially at a young age, we're kind of told, okay, you go to college, you get that degree, you'll get that job, you'll stay in it, you can make six figures, you're then successful. Or you hit the management tier and you're successful. And kind of going, it isn't a straight A to B equation. There's some hiccups in it. It's really an A to C equation. And it's okay to change. It is okay to say, I no longer want this. You know, professionally working the 80 hours a week. I want to have that work-life balance. I have kids now. I want to be doing those things. And we kind of go through that and really make it known with people from all walks of life all over the world of what that looks like for each individual person, both personally and professionally. And then on the consulting side, and coaching side, it plays into that, right? So I do a lot of one-on-one consulting of figuring out your strategy, whether that's career development or a business you're doing. Where are you looking to possibly grow? What are some of the goals you have? And it might be something, for example, you might want to hit a certain management level in an organization, but you might not want to get there for 5 or 6 years, or you might want to change careers. What are skill sets you can be learning now that you can implement in other aspects of your life, but also when it comes ready for that promotion, you can take it and actually have that leg up on someone else who might need it because you've already had those skill sets. I also do a lot of consulting in the realm of podcasting. So thinking about how you want to connect with your audience, how you might want to connect with a podcast host, your messaging. Again, it's a lot of strategy, but really figuring out what your purpose and insight wants to be.
All of that is so beautiful. And there's so many twists and turns within even just this one thing, because our lives continuously change. And like you're saying, once upon a time, and I am of a certain generation, that I was at the tail end of, let's say, the post-war generation, where the IBMers, that if you had a job, it was there for life, and the company would actually take care of you. You stayed there forever, and then they would take care of you forever. That shifted hugely in the 90s and then the 2000s. And then everything has consecutively keep morphing, so that now even how a younger generation sees a career, they really may not see any one career. They could be bopping all different careers. And so I know there has been kind of a question from the powers that be, if you will, people who are in older industries haven't quite understood how this new mindset works. But I think it's beginning to really flow. And if you're finding that, that's great. The one other thing I was going to talk about is within the pivot. And so if we think we're on a particular path, but then might get a bop on the head or something happens, that if we can be malleable enough to know that this is now a redirect, and how cool and exciting is that? And I love how you said that if there are skill sets or other bits of education, that you can be laying some foundation, laying some groundwork before your rocket launch. So somehow it all kind of ties together within being, I want to say malleable, but it's in the expansiveness of where somebody can go to achieve their best selves.
And you said something that I think is really important as well, is the importance of the pivot, but also in today's age of the work environment, it is not like it used to be. You see more and more companies, sadly, and just the way the environment is today,
Right.
not looking out for the employees, not
Right.
saying, ESPN did this when a lot of the mass layoffs were happening, and I give them kudos for it. They went to the top broadcasters, that you see on ESPN, and they were like, listen, we need to cut this amount of money. Are people willing to take the pay cut at this level so that we can keep the staff on the lower tiers so they don't have to lose their job? And some of them did. They said, you know what? We make more than we need to. We have comfortable life. The pay cut, yeah, be a pay cut, but we could then help save jobs. And the company, in my eyes, was looking out for their staff because they could have just turned around and cut the staff. And they
Right.
didn't. They said, can we be a team? How can we make this work so that we don't have to cut? A lot of organizations didn't do that. And that is, to me, a core example of why employees are so easily okay with jumping roles, not putting a job first and putting themselves first, is because we've now built this environment in society that puts me first. And whether that's a company or an individual, you put me first instead of putting the group ahead and try to problem solve. And that's why, too, it's so important to be continuously growing and thinking about what your success goals are. And if you look at me and where I was 10 years ago and what I thought success looked like and what I had to do to achieve where I wanted to be in a career, and even what I thought my career would be like for my 25, 30 years in an industry, it looked vastly different than what I think it looks like now and what even the industry I'm in. So I want to also make listeners who are listening to your show know it is okay to change.
Hmm.
You know, we have so many young professionals now that go to college, get that degree, and then they don't like the role that they went
Right.
in because there wasn't that honest conversation. And they
Right.
say, well, this is now what I have to do the rest of my life because this is what I went to school for.
Right.
And that's not true. You can take those skill sets, you can go, there's not going to be that shame. I think we all get wrapped up sometimes in the shame of what can be perceived as happening versus what
Right.
we're experiencing.
Well, and then there's guilt, and especially within the whole college structure. And if that, as a kid, you may have mentioned this a few minutes ago, you grow up and you might have some expectations from your family, and that's what you're going for. Then you go for a college career, a degree, and you're thinking, well, I just put all this time and money because it's very expensive. How dare I shift? Because didn't I commit to this? But what we're offering here is, yeah, you absolutely can shift. And there are people say there's brilliant chefs and cooks that they were going to be a doctor, and the shame of not being a doctor, but they became a chef, and that's their brilliant career. So this pivot, these changes, this is what I call the calling. We hear ourselves and move on. But take that doctor career, education, take everything, because nothing is ever wasted. All of
Oh,
that education is absolutely utilized in some fashion.
exactly. And I think, that's a key thing to take away from anything is the fact that the skill sets you gain in one area can be transferred into another
Absolutely.
area. A quick story of something I remembered is I went to Quinnipiac University and I went in undeclared, got in, and during that like weekend in the summer where you start picking your class, you go to campus, I ended up being in a classroom with the chair of the entrepreneurship program. And he was talking to me about the classes that I would take if I went into that major versus another one. And s- decided right then and there I was going to be an entrepreneurship major. And fast forward about a year and a half into the program, my fall of sophomore year, and we're sitting in class with the chair of the department. And I had started the Society for Human Resource Management student professional chapter at my university. So I was the president. Now, that's a business management, typical oriented society. People who are typically in HR, business management, would be the ones in that organization or starting it, right? And we're in the classroom and he's talking about these different skills and this and that for starting your business. And we're going through an exercise and I say something about SHRM. And he turns around and he goes, you're an entrepreneurship major. Why would you be running an HR business society? And I turned around and said, well, if I'm going to be starting my own business, shouldn't I understand how to hire people, fire people, policy? And he didn't have a reaction for me because those are all skill sets you need. And I think it's so important to be able to understand that things can collide together. And that's why now I have a degree or certification in every business area. And people say, why? Why are you involved in all these different things? Because they're all skill sets and tools that have shaped where I've gone today, but that in my own business now, I use project management thinking. I
Mhm.
have to understand supply chain. It gives me the ability to talk to many different people, understand what's going on, understand when a hiccup happens, how to potentially solve it. So it really is the importance of going, this skill set might not be for this exact role or this exact job, but I could be leveraging it to grow my own knowledge base.
I love everything about that. And let's go back to even your childhood, because again, this kind of gets into your drive. I don't know if were raised in an athletic family, but you've been an athlete, and that is a whole mindset and discipline and fire. right there. And so you were not just a swimmer, but at 9 years old, you were training as a junior Olympian. And then a pivot happened. But then you took that pivot and created something else and something else and something else. So take us through that bit of timeline, because we've gotten very broad on some of the things that you're doing, but it's very, very specific, including how you ended up doing PR for the New York Giants. I mean, all of these steps and supply chain, everything seems so vast, but each step along the way, since you were a child, has led you to the next thing and the next thing. It's very fascinating.
Well, thank you. And so when I was a child, I do have two younger sisters. They were phenomenal gymnasts. So my parents were athletic. So we all kind of had our own sport. Mine was swimming. I joke to this day, you put a pool, the ocean, like any body of water, bathtub, you will then find me there because I was probably a fish or something in another life.
Nice little
But
dolphin. Yeah.
but when I was 9 years old, I was competing against the 15, 18 age group and beating a lot of them. And I'm 5 foot now. So imagine this like tiny child competing against kids who are like 6 feet tall.
A little
Um,
guppy. You're like a little guppy.
yeah, it was very interesting. Unfortunately, at 9 years old, I was diagnosed with a rare form of epilepsy. Epilepsy is a neurological disease that actually is the most common neurological disease in the world, but something that is the least talked about.
We don't hear about
Um,
it. Yeah.
yeah, and it is something that, you know, I was diagnosed 20 years ago. We've learned so much just in the 20 years since then. And when, for example, you're underwater and have a seizure, it could be, and seizures can range from just a quick staring event that could be 3 seconds long, or what you stereotypically see on television of the shaking, the foaming at the mouth. There's a wide range. One thing it does, though, is if you're in a body of water or things like that, it will cut off the oxygen to your brain because your whole body kind of starts to shut down and react in a way.
Mhm.
Um, and so they were scared, obviously. Like this 9-year old kid, you don't know how your body's going to react. You don't know when it's going to happen. And when I had my first seizure in the water, because I had grand mal at the time, which is when I started having seizures, the seizures you do see on TV, the
Mhm.
shaking, the not knowing anything. If I had a glass in my hand, I could break the whole glass with my fist.
Yeah.
And the first time I had a seizure, I went underwater. Luckily, this is where the rare stuff starts to happen. Because I'd been swimming since I was 4 years old, my body instinctively knew if you're underwater and not swimming, you need to start doggy paddling. So I started doggy paddling. But what that ended up doing is very quickly the the swimming association and everyone was like, okay, if we want to fight for her, she wants to stay swimming, but what would that look like? It went from me really being able to be free and be in the pool and compete to now getting these looks of like, okay, when is the next thing going to happen? When
Right.
do we have to be like other people were on edge? They weren't putting me in the long races, right? Those 800-meter races or whatever. They're putting me in the 25. And
Right.
because they didn't want me to exert myself to a point. And so I really l- quickly lost the ability to really swim at my level. And my seizures were happening more and more frequently. So it
Mhm.
wasn't just like, okay, every 10 minutes, it went to like every 3 minutes, it happened for 10 seconds. So I lost that sport due to what I call like an injury. It's something
Mhm.
that's not due to my choice. Um, it took me some time of, okay, what can I be doing now? What figuring out? And when I was going into high school, I actually had my elementary school gym teacher, who was my gym teacher and my two younger sisters' gym teacher, say to me and my parents, listen, I'm actually going over to the high school when Olivia goes over, and I will be a gym teacher there. I'm also going to be the wrestling coach. Olivia, why don't you come in like manage? You know, you've loved the team aspect. You tried to figure out your path still in sport. Why don't you become a manager and work with me and help lead the team and support the guys? And so I started being their team manager, which I was very good at. And it was my time management, all these skill sets I'd learned, right, to swim well, to practice that discipline. I was able to apply in different areas. And I really started to enjoy it. And around that same time, my sisters, again, who were gymnasts, decided they were going to start diving because it's a lot of the same skills and tumbling in the air, whatever you want to call it, that goes into diving, that's in gymnastics. And I decided to do it too because you're just going into the water for about 30 seconds. By the time I graduated high school, I was the state champion holding the state record in 3-meter diving, and I was a diving coach. And I left the diving sport by choice. I was at the top of my career. I could have either done it in college or not. And so going into college, I had these different pivots in areas, right? One thing I left out is by the end of my high school career, I was managing not one, but 4 men's sports teams: wrestling, lacrosse, baseball, football.
So
And
you've been
so
in it. You've just been in it and taking that those organizational
Mhm.
skills that really just must be part of your innate wheelhouse.
And
Um,
that's the thing.
yeah.
It's taking those, and then when I got to the level of college sports,
Mhm.
I had a very different perspective than someone who had not been in sports before. I
Right.
knew what it might be to lose at something. I knew if a guy got injured, what that impact could do to you mentally,
Right.
physically, not being able to train, being cut from a team. And then leaving your senior year of college and going, okay, well, I'm not going to play pro. So now I don't have a choice. My career is over. Like I chose not to do that. And so I was able to connect and really work with the guys differently. And that's kind of what led to my connection in the pro world as well with the athletes is, okay, let's look at this and let's mentally go through this together. But like I'm kind of the mama bear in the group, and I've been there. I've been where you're going to be at some point, so let's start preparing for what might come. And that's one thing I really worked with athletes on. I still work with athletes on is like, what are the skill sets you could take away? What are the things you could start doing today that isn't just football related or hockey related?
I was just going to say life instead of or life in addition to sport, because, and I think there are whole organizations trying to help the athletes that's been their one and sole focus for so long. And that by maybe 18 or 22 or 32, that's finished in that same way. And so then now what? So this is all very key to laying those very foundations, because the other thing, if you're a college athlete and maybe you're sidelined with an injury or something, what does that even do to your college education? So there's so many levels to this. So this is really um, wonderful, that mama bearness of seeing there is life beyond that one focus.
And it's also sometimes, I think, actually been in the room we've been in, right?
Yeah.
Mentally, physically. You know, a lot of people will ask me, well, you never played football before. My school didn't have a hockey program. My high school, I never was any involved in any aspect of hockey before I went to Olympian University and started managing their 2D1 athletic programs. But there are experiences that go in that I am able to relate with. And I think what is really important for athletes to keep in mind is they are not their sport. Their sports does not identify who they are. And that also rolls into the work environment. A
Right.
lot of individuals that I talk to in different spaces that I've worked, is like, I am my job. And I go, no, your job is part of who you are. That isn't the
Right.
only thing that shape you. Your experiences shape you, right? Get being a swimmer and having that discipline at a young age, and then getting diagnosed with epilepsy, those shaped me. Those were the things that, within 6 months of my epilepsy diagnosis and not medication, not being able to control my seizures, they told me, my doctor kind of put his hands up and he was like, okay, within the next 2 years, she might not be able to be in a regular classroom. She might not be able to really graduate high school. And it was, do I stand up and fight? Do my parents fight with me? Or do we kind of just let the diagnosis win? And I laugh to this day thinking about that moment because it shaped who I was. I also learned during that process, you can be at the height of your game today and lose it all tomorrow. That
Mhm.
experience, I lost friends. My family went through not understanding what was going on and trying to be supportive. There was so many things that built on that, that now when I go into a room and I'm the youngest one in a room and trying to like break down those walls or learn something, I just remind myself, okay, what are the things that got me here? I have a voice. How am I going to use that voice in this environment?
I love that. So let's take that and get into the voice part, which is the show and some vision. And what do you see as your vision? And you used your voice with a TEDx talk. That so how you have landed. You have celebrities on your show. You have everyday people on your show. You have, but I'll just go ahead and say that as a young person, you're already next level. And so how has that all flowered and that again that kind of drive or that inner you have an inner success just rolling and just where do you see these next few steps in 24 the podcast show both of us were called on to the microphone to have a voice. Mine isn't business focused and yet it all comes together and we get to the heart of everything and so how is Olivia expanding?
Yes, and it's one of those things, and you touched upon it with the TEDx, that I look at the expansion of achieving success in general and what I'm doing, and it's not something I would have thought 3 years ago I was gonna be doing. I joked going into my 28th birthday, and I remember this vividly. Um, I had just published my book in July. My birthday is August. I'd published my book. I decided not to go back and teach. I was an adjunct professor. I was going to focus on my job, finish up my last certification, and that was going to be it. And by my 29th birthday, the weekend before I had my TEDx talk, um, I had a top ranking podcast, my own business, and life looked very different. And I think now going into this next year, the 2024 year, it's really about what are the other ways I can positively affect people. So the podcast continues to grow and we have wonderful listeners on that show and wonderful guests, but it all stems from the same thing. The celebrities we have on, the athletes, the individuals, those entrepreneurs or employees, it really stems from them wanting to be able to share their stories and let people know they're not alone and their journey isn't all the A-list moments you might see on social media. And so I really find joy in that. And then with the consulting side, it's really how can I help the next entrepreneur, that person who's been in the thick of it, that just needs someone to bounce ideas off, be supportive. How can I show up to them to help them be the most successful that they can be, get the most joy and passion out of what they're doing, and also relieve some of that stress? And I think as entrepreneurs and business owners, a lot of times, especially in the beginning, you can feel like you're going through this alone. right? Especially if you come from that corporate environment when there's so many people, you could show up to work and you have your coworkers. And now you're creating something, whether it is a podcast, whether it's that service that you're going to be providing, going and doing consulting, it could get lonely sometimes. So sometimes it's even just, how can I show up and be there for you today? So you're not the only one in the room. And understanding how I can use my voice to bring awareness to different things and how I can help others use their voices to help the community in general.
That's fantastic. And are most of your clients in the younger generation or older, or it's a mix? And part of my head thinking about this is with one of our previous guests that we had on, that one of her businesses, she also has a grief foundation, but she has a group that's trying to, she would say, connect the dots with companies looking for employees because of this gap of where communication lies, where are people not even wanting a career or to show up for work. Take on trades is the part of her business, where it's in the trade industry, because if people want to be doctors or IT or STEM in the sciences, that leaves a big gap with the hands-on type of training. So I guess my question goes into who has been coming to you for your services so that they can balance their own life and their career and know that there are all kinds of paths to take.
So I do get some young professionals who are starting to go on the job process or
Mhm.
want to grow professionally and just kind of don't know how, or they've been transitioned into a management role with leaders who were their leader. And now
Yeah.
there's that gap of, how can I hold my ground while still being respectful, keeping those relationships? But a lot of my clients too are in different points of their career because everything is customized, right? My one-on-one consulting, there's no one set program. These are the things we're going to cover. It's
Right.
you tell me where you are today and what you need help on, and let's work through it together. I have a lot of people who are business owners or trying to do personal branding come to me to try to get on podcasts. Okay, let's figure out the right podcasts to get on. Where is your community? What drives you? What is your purpose? And podcast hosts that want the right guests and to be able to build their community, their network. And
Mm.
so it's people who are, and in business, they say be niche. And I've kind of gone very against the grain on that. And I'm not.
I'm kind of
But
laughing that niche. What are you talking about? I get you can have a certain, my niche is if people know that they want to be part of Team Human, that's my niche. And how we can all work together, that's my niche. Within that, like yourself, there are many avenues for that.
And I think it's the importance of identifying your niche in especially business is, yeah,
Right.
some things you need a niche for.
Right.
But the beauty sometimes of not having that set niche is the impact you get to make. And really identifying what is your purpose, like you said, you know, you can be able to connect with a lot of different people. And that's okay. It's okay to meet people where they are. And that's the whole point of the consulting. It allows me to work with people on every different industry all over the world. But I think part of that too goes back to the fact that I've had work experiences in so many different industries.
You've had supply chain, you've had the sports, you've had tell us, just throw out a few others. It's very fascinatingly vast.
So I worked in professional sports, everything from managing players to PR to HR and working in legal to healthcare. I helped make the appointments, helping people really identify where their pain is. And that started with being the middleman between team doctors and the actual hospital and kind of expanded. when they needed help, I just stepped in. So I learned a lot about, is your pain, where's your pain really coming from?
Right.
What kind of doctor do you need to see? And then I worked in supply chain. I still sit on as the president of the Save Connecticut um, professional board. I sit on the Association of Supply Chain International board as a committee member. Let's see. Now I'm a business owner, podcasting space. It gets very vast, but I also have degrees in computer coding. I've
Get
certification in
out.
coding.
My
I
God.
have I've worked in as a financial manager for Lockheed Martin. I worked as a master scheduler for Lockheed Martin as well. Um, HR, project management, supply chain, you name it, I have it. And I think that's why I feel like I am able to be diverse, because when someone comes to me and is trying to have a conversation with me, I very much understand the space they are in
Right.
professionally. And so they don't need to sit there and try to dumb down the terminology or explain to me how the things work. I understand how they work. And so it opens that door of communication of understanding right off the gate, from the gate.
I love it. This is bringing me to perhaps how we can kind of round out this particular conversation is to do all of these things and you do them very well. There's that discipline, but there's an organization and a succinctness to it. What do you say? And if you have clients, but again, people kind of feel these days, and I was going to say generationally, but no, you pick a generation, especially within professional. And as life keeps evolving and changing, there are so many choices. So we've gone from you do the one thing and you stick to it, even marriage or women, you're going to do one thing, or maybe you're a nurse, but really you're going to raise kids. And I won't say just anymore because that's a great job. My point is those who are feeling, oh my gosh, there's so many choices. Now what? I don't know where to land. What is for me? Because I have an interest here, but I no longer have an interest there. You have very succinctly done all of these crazy ass things. What do you tell people who are feeling that lostness and where to go now?
So I say to do first a few things.
Mhm.
And the first two are definitely in this order. Take a deep breath and take a step back. Sometimes, whether it's personally, professionally, we are in the mix of our everyday lives so much. We're the center of that tornado that's going,
Right.
that we forget that, what are we really passionate about? Where do we find the joy in things? We talked about this earlier it, in a few different ways before we started recording, but then also during the recording of where I've been in my career, and that even the 2 year difference that I've had, but also I personally, and that was just professionally, personally, I have a boyfriend that's in the Coast Guard. And so a year ago, I was telling people I'll never move out of New Jersey, right? I'm going to be here forever. My spouse will live with my boyfriend or my husband. We're going to be in Jersey, South Jersey. We're not leaving. And now I'm going to be moving to Alaska. So there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of understanding. So sometimes when you're in the middle of the tornado, it's so hard to see. So first, take the step back, and then much as the noise is going on or you're feeling overwhelmed, take
Right.
that few minutes or even the hour, a few days to do some things when you're feeling that way that are just for you, right? For me, I love being in water. So when I get super stressed out and need that break, and there's not what, I'll go take a hot bath, right? I'm getting in my zone. I might do Legos. I might do just watch TV, but it's okay to take that break and
Right.
then really sit down and go, what am I liking in this thing I'm doing? What am I not liking? If I potentially want to go down this path, how are the things I'm liking in the role? Am I going to be able to do them the same, more? And that will start to really line out. Also, after doing that, or even at the same time, listen to what other people are saying. What
Right.
are other people saying your superpower is can be just as
People
important.
close to you that you trust,
Mhm.
not the swirl of the socials, because that's part of the tornado these days too. And, and I can catch myself scrolling and, am I shoulding and I should because everybody else's experience? Well, no, what is my own experience? And so I love that very question. The people that you trust, maybe it's very Brene Brown, you only have this many, not everybody, um, to hear you out, that have your
And
back.
it's also what do people even we'll take your work environment, right?
Right.
What are the people around you going? How do you do that so seamlessly
Right.
and not think how crazy everything could be, that is a lot to do or that is difficult. I think that can be just as important because there could be those small things that you look at as so easy. How can everyone not be doing this or be doing
Right.
it this way? And
Right.
everyone's going, how
How
do
do you do
you
that?
do it that way?
That's right. That's very true. So to be mindful of, well, that's your gift.
Mhm.
The stuff that comes so easily, well, that's your gift. And then how do you parlay that,
Mhm.
right? And have fun so that your profession becomes fun, becomes that seamless thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Olivia, this has been fantastic. Do you have any more nuggets that you would like to share at this point?
Well,
Plus
I
all
would
the where
just
to find
say,
you and where and all that good stuff.
so I would say the last nugget I would add is no matter where you are in life, both personally and professionally, be okay with the decisions you make. I think so many individuals go down a path that they experience things and then they turn around and beat themselves up for the route they went down. And why didn't I know that I shouldn't be doing this? And I always tell people, you're making the best decision with the information you have in front of you. So as long as you can go through life, personally and professionally, make that decision and be able to be okay with it. Lay your head down on that pillow at the end of the night. You can live with the decisions you make. And that's a good factor in going, okay, do I really want this decision or not? And I think asking yourself that question of, am I going to turn around with regret? Am I going to say, no matter the outcome, I'm okay that I made this decision? That will give you so much peace. And I think that's the last nugget I'll leave with the listeners today.
So wise, so wise. We just don't need to carry regrets with us because every decision is an experience and every experience leads us to the next experience.
Yes.
I love it. So where can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, achieving-success.com. You can search me on LinkedIn, Olivia Akin, or email me at olivia.akin@achieving-success.com. I personally answer every message, LinkedIn connection, email that comes through. So I think it's so important to be able to connect with individuals and really have that conversation with me if you're trying to reach out to me. So I will definitely answer every single person.
And of course, you have your podcast that runs
Yes.
every week. Is that correct?
Yes. Every single Tuesday we drop a new episode. And that is Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. And you can find it on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube.
Wonderful. Thanks again so much, Olivia Atkin.
Thank you for having me on.
And thanks for listening, everybody. Please remember to like, review, and share this podcast. And if you want to reach out and be part of the community, you can send emails to podcasts@lastingconversations.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube. This is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.